Hey there, I'm Max. We may not know each other yet, but I'm the guy who made this video. First of its kind. I'm doing this because I had to stop all these freeloading thoughts from taking up space in my brain that could be better utilized on things like friends' birthdays or song lyrics. So, get ready for semi-original thoughts and attempts at comedy aplenty. I broke this video down into chapters for you. I'm not going to be the one to stop you from making your kid's soccer game or going to hang out with your friends for the first time in a while. I just made it easy for you to pick up where we left off. Everything I say past this intro bit, like most things, should be taken with a grain of salt. I'm no expert in anything besides spinning a yarn, and even that I'm only semi-professional at, so do me a favor. If you have something to say that you think could be better about the video, give me some constructive ways to improve on those aspects. And if you can't think of anything besides something mean to say, just lie and tell me which outfit you liked the most. And without further ado, enjoy the show. Adapting ideas from one medium to another can be hard. Trust me, I know firsthand. Look at all the attempts to make multi-million-dollar game franchises into blockbuster hits, or turning classics from the silver screen into an interactive experience meant for a much smaller screen. It can be hard to determine what's quintessential for capturing the essence of the original work, and what needs to be modified in order to adapt the material into an entirely different medium. Comics are the worst, both as the victim and the perpetrator. They've got decades upon decades of storylines, characters crossing paths, ideas that should have been left on the cutting room floor, but were greenlit with seemingly no regard for the past or future stories surrounding them. And that doesn't even take into account all the retcons. All that's to say, even without a feverish fan base, comic books can be a nightmare to adapt. However, that doesn't mean it can't be done.
That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
I'll take it you're familiar with this masterpiece? If you aren't, I highly recommend you get the hell out of here and go watch the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I'll still be here when you decide to come back. Go on. Animated art piece Into the Spider-Verse came out in 2018 and was the perfect gift for a Spider-Man fan like me. This movie has it all. Beautiful visuals, a satisfying story arc for nearly every one of its main cast, and most important of all, faithful adaptations of several comic book characters that gives them new life while staying true to their core characterizations found in their respective source materials. I've read more than my fair share of Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ghost Spider, Spider-Noir, not Spider-Ham, the little bits of Penny Parker we got in the original Spider-Verse crossover event. You name it, I've either read it or culturally osmosised it into my rotting cerebral cortex. And it seems like the crew behind Spider-Verse did too. Now, while I'd love to gush about every little thing I felt the crew did right, I'm going to focus on some key examples that'll be useful for us. How about we start with a character? Miles Morales.
Wait a minute, get it how you live it. 10 toes in when we standing on business. I'm a big stepper, underground methods. Top-notch hoes, get the most, not the lesser. Straight terror, product of your errors. Pushing culture, baby, got that powder you can measure. Trendsetter, the one who get the weather. Swerving while I'm bumping Project Petter.
Miles Morales is a character made by a white guy who was meant to replace another white guy that everybody liked in a universe that really was only kept afloat by that aforementioned white guy. Now, being a fan of that white guy, I was genuinely surprised when they decided to kill him off. He was the most engaging version of Peter Parker I had read up until that point. It would eventually be overshadowed by another story by another writer, but inked by the same person. It's pretty cool. The way they did it was insane too. And that's saying something given just how many batshit decisions were made with the Ultimate Universe. A lot of which I liked, but most of which I actively ignored unless they came up in any major way again. However, unlike the really loud fans of comics, I was happy with how Peter's story ended, and was excited to get a unique, mainstream Spidey. Especially since he was a blank slate when it came to history. No messy baggage or classic storylines people want to adapt or redo. Nothing but an enormous legacy to follow. I think the crew behind Into the Spider-Verse understood just how interesting the characters and themes associated with Ultimate Spider-Man are, and simply refused to just clone Peter's story and put his trauma onto somebody else and call it original. It's this love and respect for the source material that makes Miles' arc so satisfying throughout the Spider-Verse movies, at least in my eyes. It's familiar, but fresh. The best way to describe an adapted work. There were no holds barred when they killed Peter. The weight that Miles feels with Peter's death, even the desire to break away from the mistakes of the past in order to be the best version of himself, and thus a better hero. All of this alone, adapted for the big screen, would kill, especially with the work put into its amazing animation style and breathtaking soundtrack. But Miles isn't the only Spider-Person they wanted in this movie, and they knew that. It doesn't matter if it's goofy. If you're gonna put Fisk and Tombstone in the movie, you're gonna have them be a brick wall and the cement used to keep the bricks in place. It doesn't matter if nobody but the huge nerds will recognize him. Put in the Ultimate Universe version of Scorpion. So you want to do what to his design? Okay, that actually looks sick as hell. You know the rule. If it looks cool, it doesn't matter how long it takes, do it. This unspoken rule of cool elevates the already spectacular characterization of the main cast of Spider-Folk from good to great. Each universe has its own style, its tone, even its genre bleed into Miles' world, with these spider people as the conduit for this melding of concepts and comic pages, only furthering the theme of anyone can be Spider-Man, regardless of their origin. And just as Miles would have to learn what it takes to be a Spider-Man that can live up to the name, so too did the Spider-Verse team have a lot to live up to. This isn't the first time we've seen a Spidey story in Q4 of 2018 with Miles Morales as a lead role. It's also not the first time we've seen the whole multiple Spider-Man across alternate worlds come together to stop someone from destroying all of their worlds or worse plotline, with animation that holds up pretty well today. Hell, it isn't even the first story of that nature to feature not one, but two Peter Parkers, a Spider-Noir, and someone we'll get to a little later. But almost in spite of all that pressure, they still chose to take big swings. Shove a shit ton of Spider variants on screen, we'll just make them lovable. Give them all full character arcs, or shove a beloved voice actor in the role. Shit, do it all at once! Let's painstakingly animate the whole thing at a non-traditional frame rate solely so it feels more like a comic book. We want people to get it. The feeling of these characters, the depth and detail of the worlds they inhabit, the energy of a good crossover event. That is what I love about Into the Spider-Verse. It wears its heart and its influences on its sleeve. It has faith that the audience is willing to dive in just as much as the creators did. It is unabashedly a comic book movie. Compare it to any of the preceding or following blockbuster superhero movies and tell me I'm wrong.
Now, when you think of anxiety in a Marvel movie, which of these two depictions do you think is a better representation? This one or this one? Okay. And if I told you to think of a mascot character of sorts, a funny animal from a Marvel movie, which of these two works better in that role? This one or these? No wrong answers. Now, if I told you to think Spider-Man, which of these two works better in your mind? This one or this one? Are you sure you... Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, Max.
I hear you groan from the ever-deepening dent being created in your IKEA office chair.
You like Into the Spider-Verse? Big whoop.
No shit, big whoop. Enormous whoop. Sensational whoop. This movie has all the building blocks that industry folks need to get their shit together and make good art. Movies, if ever, are rarely allowed to have a message besides US government good, not paying your staff livable wages or seeing their families ever again, equally as good, if not better. And when I hear that the same crew who helmed the first Spider-Verse movie is going to do it again, the only logical reaction is to be hyped. And it comes out at the start of the summer? What the fuck?
A cup of chai with my auntie.
I love chai tea.
What did you just say?
Across the Spider-Verse, the real focus of this video, does a lot. It's got all the pressure of being a good Spider-Man movie while also being a good sequel to a movie widely regarded as great. At this point, before I had seen the movie, I'd been cherry-picking my media consumption. There were so many interesting stories being told out there that it felt like a waste to keep putting energy into something I stopped believing in a while ago. I won't say everything that was coming out was mindless, but you're not going to catch me going to bat for the MCU or the DCU at this point. Even the animated stuff. You suck! Look, Flashpoint Paradox and Teen Titans were great. Don't get me wrong. But expecting me to give a shit about the DCU is like expecting me to give a shit about Star Wars after the original trilogy. Look, you can't make me watch any more of that shit. I don't care how good Season 1 of The Mandalorian is. I'm not one to consider getting back with my exes, but I thought Spider-Verse was a worthy exception to the superhero rule. I didn't know shit about the movie besides it was a sequel to Spider-Verse 1, that one dumb line Miles says about Spider Society in those ads before I could skip 5 seconds, and that my second favorite Spider-Person was in it. So you can bet your bottom dollar my ass was seated, opening night, ready to watch that bad boy with my bad boys. And while I went in with what I thought was an appropriate amount of hype and reservation,
You absolutely
have been found wanting.
My friends talked with feverish delight about how much they enjoyed the film, grins as wide as the white vinyl screens they were looking at prior. But I just sat there and shut my mouth. In that moment, as I was walking out of the theater, thinking to myself, what the fuck are you feeling right now? And what do you mean you knew it was a part 2 after my friend had offhandedly mentioned he read about it a week prior? It felt rude to kill their collective highs, so when it came my turn to talk about how I felt about the movie, I kept it brief. Highlighted the good parts, visuals are next level. The soundtrack knew what it was doing. The twist. I touched on some of the weird audio mixing and danced around the problems I had yet to properly word in my head. I don't think I liked it as much as the first one, but hey, it's a part 1 of part 2, so once part 2 comes out, maybe it'll all come together. It felt ridiculous that they were splitting it up to begin with, but to see it was an outright lie. That catharsis was teased just to remove any real faith I had in the team, and more so the executives that wanted to get rid of that money-draining team itself. I thought Spider-Verse was Hollywood's exception. And so I slept on it. Let my thoughts broil in the crock pot that is my brain.
Why is it that this movie feels fundamentally different from its predecessor? It clearly improves in many departments. There's still some pretty spectacular character adaptation for new folks, while building on the foundational characters focused on in the first. It takes the concept of Spider Society from the Spider-Verse crossover, cuts away all the weird comic book bullshittery that led to it being pseudo-formed there, and allows the idea to blossom and flourish while still being palatable to newcomers. Shit, they're still pulling wacky-ass pulls like the Spot out from the idea attic and taking them super seriously. Well, as seriously as you can with the Spot before you think about his abilities for more than 5 seconds of screen time. With time and reading a shit ton more comics, it came to me. There's definitely something off here. People are starting to see some cracks, but no one's really getting at the core of the issue. Maybe it's too part one-y. We've seen superhero properties get stretched too thin before. A subsequent viewing or two can show you that while it causes the pacing to falter around Act 3, it's not a problem for the whole movie. Maybe there are issues behind the scenes. Oh, for sure. But when 100 animators say they're out, I think I'm gonna have to side with the animators. Also, it looked great. Nothing on that end felt too unfinished or unpolished. I'm sure Sony producers had notes, but given just how much the original team got to pull out for Into and Across the Spider-Verse, I don't see how much worse they could have gotten. And that got me thinking. They did pull from a lot of Spider media. And they were faithful. Not too faithful. Nobody likes a stickler for the old ways. No, it was clear they could pull anything from the comics and make it work. But they wanted perfect. They caught lightning in a bottle once. Who's to say they couldn't do it again? Maybe catch a bigger bolt. Just gotta hope the bottle doesn't break. Leaves you with a whole lot of glass, and no one but you to clean it up. And in this city, cleaning up broken glass is as routine as breathing in smoke. The original crew were out of the question, couldn't have done it. Half of them weren't even in it for more than a trailer moment. So it had to be a newbie. Someone added into this movie that threw the whole thing out of whack. Spider-Woman? Nah, her vibes were all there. Anyone saying it's her sees Fortnite lobbies more than they see sunlight. Pavtir? No, the emotional argument gets too personal for Miles if there isn't a clear example of the faults of the system, and his world is it, big time. Spider-Punk? Nah, that guy fucking rocks. That left me with one clear suspect. Someone pivotal to the plot. Someone added to the movie world in this one, but not in the first. Someone who, it seems, can't seem to get away from the curse that befell them in their own comic syndication. It's always the ones you love the most that leave you hurting.
And you... I'm just gonna try and ignore you. I can't even.
I ain't even here.
Miguel O'Hara was a kid from Nueva York. Mother was crazy but loved him. Dad was a shithead. Brother was as good as they come. Him? A genius, by all accounts, especially his own. Arrogant as a motherfucker. Reminds me of a certain somebody. Spider-Man 2099 was certainly a hero that had been done before. Fundamentally, he was very, very similar to the Spidey that we knew at the time. However, with an interesting setting and enough of the differences in the nitty-gritty, 2099 had some staying power. When I started reading 2099, I didn't just read Spidey. He was my main reason for reading, but I also read a lot of the tie-ins to understand where the hell Miguel went when he started referencing random things in the author's notes. I am still confused as to why the Fantastic Four was just the normal Fantastic Four in the future, but that's besides the point. None of these other characters really had the same staying power that 2099 had. Then that makes sense to me. That isn't to say that there weren't interesting characters mainlining other 2099 runs, but I will say that outside of designs, I don't know if they had a lot going on in the idea portion of those writers' rooms. Folks cooking up Miguel's stories, though, they had plenty. Miguel is surprisingly compelling. He's earnest, confrontational, not afraid to say what's on his mind, a real piece of shit, and yet, even when refusing the hero's call, he's still acting in a way that is heroic. O'Hara becomes somebody you want to see succeed, and most importantly for a long-term story, grow. There's not much better than seeing this guy observe the faults of the world around him and attempt to tear down the fundamental building blocks that diminish the lives that make up the world around him. I guess we can use more of that mentality. Miguel also cares about his family, in spite of having a clear conflict with the only two people still left from it, and no, I am not counting his real dad. I think that was the same level of mistake that they made when they made Peter Parker a spider totem instead of just a normal fucking guy. Except in the case of 2099, it makes perfect sense, because of course a billionaire would treat their son like that. He even cares about his AI assistant, who is probably the closest thing he has to an actual fucking friend the entire run. I mean, shit, he barely gets along with the heroes he teams up with. Now, is that because they seem fucking crazy? Hell yeah. But that also adds to the Miguel O'Hara charm. Despite having goals and ideas for bettering the wild future world of 2099, he feels grounded and real in a way that makes sense for the gritty future genre pieces of the time. All that's to say, I really like Miguel O'Hara's characterization in the original run. There were good arcs, an interesting setting, and
Breaking news! Online Nerd's current favorite comic run unexpectedly ends with no real resolution decades ago. Officials over at Marvel had this to say.
2090 what? Oh, the comic thing! Yeah, I used to sit right next to that team. Yeah, all those writers quit when that one guy got canned. But I got the whole floor to myself now, so I'd call it a win.
A real shame they did that to you all that time ago. Back to you, Max.
this, folks, is why you always and properly pay your writers, and never, ever treat a workforce as a bunch of individuals that you can just happen to work with in the same building. And thus, the original 2099 run of Spider-Man would come to an end. There will be a couple of returns to the character now and then, later down the line. A couple solo runs that barely add anything here, a couple cameos and other Spider materials there, and eventually a fun little role in the Spider-Verse crossover. At the time of writing, they're actually doing something fun with him in the world of 2099. But everything that's happened in between the end of the original run and now, and some of the stuff at the end of that run, have put a weird amount of baggage in the way of future writers. Making an engaging and comprehensible story with what they had would be hard, but definitely possible if given time. Also, we really gotta stop killing people's family at this point. I'm getting real tired of it.
Now you may be asking yourself, Max, for what purpose did you just talk about all that bullshit? And why, pray tell, was it all so fucking vague? And to that, I reply, I hope it inspires you to actually read the character, or watch somebody's synopsis of his story, because it's worth sharing. And Comic Miguel O'Hara is a top-tier spider person. Also because shut the fuck up and let me talk my shit. Now let's look at Movie Miguel. Wait a minute, how is this the same guy? Why is Miguel the male lead in a Hallmark movie? What do you mean he doesn't crack jokes? And why is his suit blue? Okay, that last part is definitely a nitpick, but for real, he would not be caught dead at the Dia de los Muertos fiesta in a bright blue suit. That shit was black and red and edgy all over.
Why is it that every other character they've added to the movie gets to keep their personalities, yet Miguel O'Hara has to become someone almost completely different? In canon, he has traits that could make him a villain if need be. Even if he's just played as a misunderstood or manipulated for a while guy, it wouldn't be straight up character assassination. He has motivations you could twist to create conflict between him and Miles. The two have a hell of a lot in common when it comes to legacy, that's for sure. Maybe this version of Miguel believes too closely in the scientific method of making a hero. Seeing the golden age of heroes, especially Spider-Man and his tragedies, alongside all the other Spider people that he keeps finding throughout the multiverse, makes him think that there's a surefire, almost algorithmically efficient way to make the perfect Spider-Person. And people who deviate too far from that tend to do more harm than good. Maybe this version of Miguel is too Alchemax build, and if he doesn't follow what his old CEO daddy says is right and wrong, he'll die from the super drug he concocted and poisoned his son with. Could be that the drug also makes him susceptible to suggestion, especially from Stone, so when Miles sees ways to improve the Spider Society, Stone sees Miles as a threat to both his interdimensional police force for, infinite research and business opportunities, along with his ego, so he seeks his own personal Spidey after him. Instead of those options or something more in line with his character from the comics, we just get this wannabe vampire. I mean, at least they gave him Lila, but damn. When I was looking into what people thought about the movie after it came out, I was genuinely surprised that nobody was talking about how Miguel didn't match his comic counterpart at all. In fact, the general populace seemed to ignore how his motivations as a character in general were whack and at times illogical. Like, this guy is supposed to be the genius who cracked interdimensional travel and has formed a society of spider people to help all throughout the multiverse, and yet he thinks Miles is a variant that shouldn't be allowed to exist despite his universe not breaking down like his ideal world? Is he supposed to be smart, or is he supposed to be stupid for the plot? I'm fine with a stupid villain, but we've got to make it consistent for the audience to buy in. Maybe, just maybe, they really clutch it up in the second half. Maybe they drop the Miguel thing entirely. No matter where the third movie ends up plotting on this spectrum, or on a calendar, ever, I still think it would feel like a wasted opportunity. On most given days, Miles is my favorite Spider-Man. Seeing him get this treatment in the public eye, to have little kids say that that's their Spider-Man, that it's cool to have a Spider-Man they can relate to and feel represented by, it's goddamn amazing. Now that Miguel has had his time in the spotlight, I worry his image is never gonna recover. People are just gonna see him as the evil vampire Spider-Man, or that one Oscar Isaac voiced.
Actually, the only Spider-Man with vampirism is actually Miles Morales. And the thing you may be referring to with Miguel O'Hara happens to be his fangs that secrete a deadly venom, or at the very least a stunning one, depending on your source. The only other Spider-Man-related person you could possibly be mixing him up with would have to be Dr. Michael Morbius of the Morbius movie, but we all know nobody really watched that one.
While I related to Miles and Peter in a lot of different ways, I could just see myself in Miguel in a way that I just couldn't with the others. We're both mixed Hispanic kids with an out-of-touch Hispanic experience. We lived in and are shaped by science and the ways capitalism injects itself in. We still both try to make a difference in spite of just how much society wants us to ignore people. To know with what feels like complete certainty that the public just won't have that feeling of understanding with Miguel tears me up inside. That's what kills me about his treatment in the media, not just here, but in so much of his stuff. Him in the dark and neon, hyper-capitalist world that he lives in get thrown to the side like toys and picked back up and thrown into the mix whenever they need someone or something to fill a void in a team-up. In the movie's case, the lack of consistency in the antagonistic 2099's logic, and to a certain extent, his motivations, are only amplified by the departure from the source material and the details in it that could have been used to fill those gaps. In a weird way, both 2099 and the Spider-Verse crew have taken an uncharacteristic departure from the people we knew before this movie. I'll hop off my soapbox now. There's still more to discuss. More specifically, I want to touch on a character I think would work as the antagonist the writers were forcing Miguel to be. Let me tell you about my third favorite Spider-Man.
Together, you and I could be so much, rule so much. We would be superior.
Where have I heard that line before?
Picture this. Out there in the great big multiverse, there are countless spider people. Horses with magic spider bites. Thousands of spiders in spandex. And in a not too distant place, the Peter Parker you're familiar with. But not. He's got a lot more going on here. Not because of Spider-Man, but because of Peter Parker. He's inventing things for more than just stopping bad guys. He's building a business from the ground up. He's got friends, good coworkers. Shit, he's putting real respect on the Parker name. Sure, he's a little more egotistical, but it takes a little crazy to be a genius. With all that newfound capital and drive to improve, he's not just applying that philosophy to his personal life. Because this isn't just Peter we're talking about. This is Spider-Man. A new era is being ushered in, as comics are often wont to do. But unlike so many iterations of change Peter Parker's undergone throughout his decades of publication, for once, he's not getting sent back to zero. It's not the status quo for him anymore. No longer will Peter Parker live paycheck to paycheck. And he's going to do everything in his power to ensure that he betters himself, learning from the mistakes of his past, being a better Peter, and a better Spider-Man. But what's the secret to his success? How did the perpetually late, clumsy and airheaded, good at heart Peter Parker finally get the fame and recognition he deserves? A magician never reveals his greatest secret. He is not a magician. And we are not bound to the knowledge of tabloids and scientific papers alone. No, today I will tell you the story of the man who nearly destroyed the world and stole another. One who could have brought the story of Across the Spider-Verse into equal footing with its visuals and soundtrack and conversations of its triumphs, regardless of it being a part one, and would have had my ass in the seats waiting every single day until Beyond the Spider-Verse came out. I'll tell you the story of Otto Octavius, of the superior Spider-Man. At least I would. As I said before, I'm not a recap channel. People do a way better job with that concept than I want to at this time, and thus I shall give you the TLDR. Otto Octavius, after holding the world ransom with space lasers, just stay with me on this one, swaps bodies with Spider-Man and takes over Peter's life, and leaving Peter to die in his old decrepit body. If you're not already in, give the prelude and first issue a run through, and I can guarantee you will be by the end. This run was so intriguing in all the right ways. Peter is humble, Otto is an egomaniac. Peter is fueled by responsibility. Otto runs on pride. Pete knows how to hold back. Otto revels in excess. Peter is a hero, and Otto thinks he is. Watching Otto learn just how much Peter's holding back, just how much he sacrificed to be the best Spider-Man he could be, all the fame and wealth he passed on for better or for worse. It's astonishing, truly. I love so much of what the team did to humanize Otto and give him real arcs while still showing that there were some parts that Peter could actually be improving in his life. All while Otto has to balance three personas: himself, Peter, and Spider-Man. This run was one of the greats, and is still a concept that can keep me invested throughout the whole thing. So much of that has to do with the ideas of legacy and responsibility. How do you compare yourself to those that came before you? How do you do better than them? How much should someone reasonably sacrifice for the greater good? By now, you're hopefully picking up what I'm putting down. If there was ever a Spider-Person to fill the shoes of an antagonistic leader in charge of all Spider people throughout the multiverse, one that feels he knows the power and responsibility of being Spider-Man more than anybody in any room ever, one that still has wants and needs, some of which are control-related and some of which are relationship-related, Superior Spider-Man is the man for the job. Think about it.
Easy option A, 2099 cracks the multiversal code and starts recruiting spider people. Issue is, he hasn't been doing this nearly as long as the others he's finding. One Spider-Man, in his eyes, has it down pat. keeps crime at a minimum, has a successful business, and is literally the man he based his Spider-Man research off of. This Spidey, a superior Spidey variant, sees the opportunity and grabs that leadership position. Now, option B is a little more involved, but walk with me. Maybe there's a Spider-Man on the brink of death after attempting to take down a certain crime lord's collider. But instead of meeting an untimely demise, he's met with the dry, sarcastic wit of a Spider-Man from a far-flung future, here to determine the disturbance in the multiverse coming from this world. The duo barely escapes with their lives. They go on to do some snooping at Alchemax, to get collider files and make a goober, but they get split up as an autonomous security system screeches to life in the facility. While Prime Spidey deals with all sorts of Octobots in his attempt to steal collider files, Miguel comes across a man in a room deep under the facility. The man in front of him is unrecognizable behind various tubes and metal casings that act as his life support. What Miguel sees here is a scientist trapped underground and forced to work for Kingpin. Someone who should be saved. Needs to be. After being slightly startled, the two talk. The man speaks through a machine as his body is broken down so much. He speaks of his employment to Kingpin, the mental and physical stress his work has caused him, the deterioration of his body, of how he needs to give Kingpin results lest he be unable to afford the life support he uses. With alarms blaring, it was no wonder Miguel didn't know that his spider sense was telling him that the threat wasn't outside the room, but right in front of him. Out of that room leaves a new man, and inside of that room, a man who only wanted to help is left frail, confused, and alone.
From there, the rest of the movie can play out super similarly, but the backstory tweaks things a little bit. Superior Spidey tried to make it work with his love interest from the comics, Anna Maria, instead of a woman with no name at all. And it almost works with her and their kid, but that universe implodes, and he doesn't know why. Remnants of Miguel or Peter's psyche reach out to Otto, telling him that tragedy follows Spider-Man like a shadow, no matter how superior they think they are. And just like all the Spideys before him, he blames himself. Now all he can do is dedicate his time to this multiverse project, to make sure that this tragedy never happens again, that only the right Spider people interact with and protect the multiverse. The superior Spider people.
This new Miguel takes the collider down without Spidey, proving his superiority to him and this world. So he leaves, with grand ideas of a society of only the best Spider people, and him in charge of all of them. You cannot have any fake spiders. Sure, accidents happen, but I've seen what a rogue spider can do, especially when the multiverse is involved. So no, Miles can't join us now. He's reckless. With time, he may grow, but it's not our job to cultivate and mold the minds of the youth. He was a temporary solution to a glitch in the multiversal system. He needs to stay in his universe, where his meddling and rambunctious nature don't disrupt anything else. Less variables to mess with, less potential problems to solve. What do you mean he's out of his universe? What do you mean a multiversal threat that he couldn't stop and your team dropped the ball on is on the loose? Of course it came from his universe. I told you he wasn't ready for a threat like this. All power, very little responsibility. You were supposed to be ready. Bring him back to his world immediately. Do not let him interrupt any missions, and certainly don't let him disrupt a canon event. We do not have the technology to run a simulation accurate enough to calculate the instability that would cause. Yet. We will, just not now. Don't you see? I've told you time and time again, yet it falls on deaf ears. He is not ready. At this rate, he may never be ready. You have started the destruction of one world, yet you would so quickly jump to the next without any thought to the former. What would your Peter say, Would he be proud of your actions? Would he have been so quick to leave your world defenseless? You say the Spot will return to your world and kill your father. Your canon event. My boy, you do not have a canon to begin with. If not for the actions of your Kingpin, you would be a normal child. Your canon event would be the failure of a math test, or the dropping of an ice cream cone. Return to your universe so the superior Spider people can fix your mistakes, including the Spot.
I hope I sold the vibe of what could have been if there was a different Spidey in the antagonist role. There's a lot that went into this movie that made it so great, and the crew's attention to detail and every other aspect of it is impeccable. So I think you can understand why I'd want to scream from the mountaintops about how it was so close to being better, but just wasn't. I hope I did a good enough job explaining my love for these characters. There's a lot of media that explores them way better than what goes on in the multiverse here, so if you are so inclined and the desire burns up within you to seek out these characters in a much more detailed manner, let me be the first to see you off on your journey. I hope you take the time to critique the things you love. It may seem like a surefire way to make you hate everything you already like, but to me, understanding that not everything is perfect, that everybody has their own interpretations of art and of story, familiarizing yourself with the tools people utilize to evoke emotion or get a point across, all of it helps me appreciate the art that I love that much more. Knowing all the time and hard work it takes to just make something, anything, can deepen your appreciation of the world around you. So learn. Learn from others as much as you can. You may not think it's important to experience every little thing, but one day, if you get the chance to create something yourself, whether practical, personal, or a bit of both, you can more easily see how all the pieces come together and how your work fits into that picture. You may even be able to avoid the mistakes of the past and make something superior. When you listen to an album you thought you'd love but falls flat in your eyes, you may still be able to find something to appreciate about it, whether it's the overall vibe or a specific song. When you're playing a game that feels a little janky or unfair, you may be able to sit down and see the line between where the developers intended you to have trouble and where the game may just be actual bullshit. And hopefully, the next time you are blown away by something, you can look at all the effort it took to make that and appreciate just how amazing it really is.
Oh, the cars. Cars are a thing.